Hello and welcome back our channel. Let me ask you something. Have you been studying English for years, yet still feel nervous when it's time to speak? You know many words. You understand grammar rules. You watch videos, read articles, and maybe even complete online courses. But when a real conversation begins, your mind suddenly goes blank. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Here's a surprising truth. Most people do not fail to become fluent because they lack talent. They fail because they practice English the wrong way. Many learners believe fluency comes from studying harder, memorizing more vocabulary, or spending hours with grammar books. But in reality, fluency is often built through small daily habits repeated consistently over time. Think about it. A person who studies English intensely for 5 hours once a week may make less progress than someone who practices for 20 minutes every single day. Why? Because language is not knowledge. Language is a skill, and skills grow through repetition. In today's story, we're going to explore 6 powerful daily habits that can gradually transform your English from something you study into something you naturally use. These are not complicated techniques. They do not require expensive courses. They do not require living in an English-speaking country. Instead, they are practical habits that thousands of successful English learners use every day. Some of them may surprise you. Some may challenge what you've believed about language learning. But if you apply them consistently, they can help you become more confident, more comfortable, and more fluent than you ever thought possible. So take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin with the first habit that separates fluent speakers from lifelong learners. Lesson 1. Stop studying English and start living in English. Many English learners spend years studying the language. They memorize vocabulary lists. They complete grammar exercises. They watch lesson after lesson. Yet somehow, fluency still feels far away. Why? Because there is a big difference between studying English and living in English. Imagine someone who wants to learn how to swim. They read books about swimming. They watch videos about swimming. They learn every swimming technique perfectly, but they never enter the water. Would they become a good swimmer? Of course not. The same thing happens with language learning. Many people spend most of their time learning about English instead of actually using English. They treat English as a school subject rather than a communication tool. Fluent speakers do something different. They try to make English part of their everyday lives. They create small moments throughout the day where English becomes natural. For example, instead of thinking about their morning plans in their native language, they try thinking in English. Instead of checking social media in their native language, they follow English-speaking creators. Instead of listening only to music in their own language, they spend part of their day listening to English podcasts, stories, or interviews. These small choices may seem insignificant, but over weeks and months, they create a powerful effect. Your brain begins to see English not as something separate from daily life, but as a normal part of your world. This is exactly how children learn their first language. They don't memorize thousands of words before speaking. They live inside the language every day. They hear it. They use it. They make mistakes. And gradually, they improve. Many adult learners underestimate the power of exposure. They search for secret techniques while ignoring the simple habit of surrounding themselves with English daily. You don't need to move to America. You don't need to quit your job and study full-time. You simply need to increase the amount of English that naturally enters your life. Start small. Change your phone language settings. Listen to 10 minutes of English while walking. Describe what you're doing in English as you cook, clean, or drive. These actions may feel awkward at first. That's normal. Every new habit feels uncomfortable before it becomes familiar. But over time, something remarkable happens. You stop translating every sentence. You stop overthinking every word. And English begins to feel less like a foreign language and more like a familiar friend. That is the moment when real fluency starts to grow. And the next habit will show you why speaking more is often less important than many learners believe. Lesson 2. Learn to listen before you try to speak perfectly. One of the biggest frustrations for English learners is speaking. Many people wake up every day thinking, I need to speak more. I need more confidence. I need better pronunciation. While speaking is important, there is something even more important that many learners overlook. Listening. Think about how babies learn language. Before they say their first word, they spend months listening. Before they form sentences, they hear thousands of sentences. Long before they speak, their brains are quietly absorbing patterns, sounds, and meanings. Yet many adult learners try to reverse this process. They push themselves to speak before they have built a strong foundation of listening. As a result, speaking feels stressful and unnatural. They struggle to find words. They hesitate constantly. They translate from their native language, and they wonder why conversations feel exhausting. The answer is simple. Their brains have not received enough understandable English input. Fluent speech is often the result of extensive listening. The more English you hear, the more familiar sentence patterns become. The more familiar those patterns become, the easier it is for your brain to use them naturally during conversations. This is why some learners suddenly experience what seems like a breakthrough. One day, phrases start appearing automatically. Responses come more quickly. Speaking feels smoother. What changed? Usually, they have spent hundreds of hours listening. Not memorizing, not studying grammar, listening. But there is an important detail. Passive listening alone is not enough. Many people play English videos in the background while doing other things and expect fluency to appear. Real progress comes from active listening. Pay attention to how people speak. Notice common expressions. Listen to the rhythm of sentences. Observe how native speakers connect ideas. When you hear a useful phrase, pause and repeat it aloud. Not because you are trying to memorize it, but because you are helping your brain become familiar with natural English. Choose content that is slightly above your current level. If the material is too easy, growth slows down. If it is too difficult, frustration increases. The ideal content allows you to understand most of the message while still learning something new. Stories are especially powerful. Stories keep your attention. Stories provide context. Stories help vocabulary become memorable. And most importantly, stories make learning feel less like studying and more like experiencing. Remember this: you cannot consistently produce language that you have never consistently heard. Every fluent speaker is first an excellent listener. The words that come out of your mouth tomorrow are influenced by what enters your ears today. So before you worry about speaking perfectly, focus on feeding your mind with high-quality English every day. Because the next habit is where many learners unknowingly slow down their progress, even when they are studying hard. Lesson 3. Stop chasing more vocabulary and start using what you already know. Have you ever learned a new English word, felt excited about it, and then forgotten it a few days later? If so, you're experiencing something that happens to almost every language learner. Many people believe that fluency comes from knowing more words. So they download vocabulary apps. They memorize long word lists. They write hundreds of new words into notebooks. Every day, they add more and more information to their minds. But there is a problem. Knowing a word is not the same as being able to use it. In fact, many learners already know far more English than they think. The real challenge is not learning new vocabulary. The real challenge is turning passive vocabulary into active vocabulary. Passive vocabulary includes words you recognize when reading or listening. Active vocabulary includes words you can use naturally while speaking and writing. The gap between these two categories is often much larger than people realize. For example, you may understand the word opportunity when you hear it. But can you use it comfortably during a conversation? Can you create multiple sentences with it? Can you use it without stopping to think? If not, that word is still mostly passive. This is why many learners feel stuck. They keep collecting new words while rarely practicing the words they already know. Imagine trying to build a house. Every day, you buy more bricks, but you never use them. After a while, you have thousands of bricks but no house. Vocabulary works the same way. Words become useful only when they are used repeatedly in real situations. Instead of learning 50 new words this week, try using 10 familiar words in different ways. Create sentences. Tell short stories. Describe your day. Write a journal entry. Use those words until they become part of your natural speech. You may be surprised by how much progress comes from mastering a small number of useful words. In everyday conversations, native speakers often rely on common vocabulary far more than advanced vocabulary. Fluency is not about using complicated words. Fluency is about expressing ideas clearly and comfortably. A person who confidently uses 2,000 common words will often communicate better than someone who knows 10,000 words but struggles to use them. This is an important mindset shift. Don't measure progress by how many words you learn. Measure progress by how many words you actually use. The goal is not to build the largest vocabulary. The goal is to build a vocabulary that works for you. When you focus on using English instead of collecting English, something begins to change. Your confidence grows, your speaking becomes smoother, and conversations start feeling more natural. But there is another obstacle that silently prevents many learners from becoming fluent. It's not vocabulary. It's not grammar. It's the fear of making mistakes. And that is exactly what we'll explore in the next habit. Lesson 4. Make friends with mistakes. Let's talk about one of the biggest enemies of English fluency. It is not a lack of vocabulary. It is not poor grammar. It is not even a lack of time. It is the fear of making mistakes. For many learners, this fear becomes an invisible prison. Before speaking, they carefully think about every word. They check every grammar rule in their minds. They worry about pronunciation. They worry about sounding foolish. They worry about what other people might think. And because of all that worry, they often say very little. Or worse, they say nothing at all. The tragedy is that this fear feels helpful. It feels like you are trying to avoid errors. But in reality, you are avoiding growth. Think about any skill you have ever learned. Did you ride a bicycle perfectly the first time? Did you drive a car without making mistakes? Did you learn to use a computer without confusion? Of course not. Mistakes were part of the learning process. Language is no different. In fact, mistakes are not evidence that you are failing. They are evidence that you are learning. Every mistake reveals something your brain is still trying to master. Every correction gives you valuable information. Every awkward conversation teaches you something that no textbook can teach. Yet many learners expect perfection from themselves. They compare their English to native speakers who have been using the language for decades. They compare their Chapter 1 to someone else's Chapter 20. And as a result, they become discouraged. Here's a healthier perspective. Instead of asking, "What if I make a mistake?" ask, "What if this mistake helps me improve?" That small change in thinking can transform your learning experience. Many fluent English speakers who learned the language as adults made thousands of mistakes. Thousands. The difference is that they kept going. They viewed mistakes as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. When they mispronounced a word, they learned from it. When they used incorrect grammar, they adjusted. When they felt embarrassed, they continued anyway. Over time, those small corrections accumulated into fluency. Remember this: people rarely judge your mistakes as harshly as you judge yourself. Most people are focused on understanding your message, not analyzing every error. And many native speakers actually admire those who are brave enough to communicate in a second language. So give yourself permission to be imperfect. Speak even when you're unsure. Write even when your sentences aren't perfect. Practice even when it feels uncomfortable. Because fluency is not built by avoiding mistakes. Fluency is built by moving through them. The learners who improve fastest are often not the smartest. They are the ones who are willing to be beginners for longer. And once you stop fearing mistakes, you'll be ready for a habit that can dramatically accelerate your progress every single day. A habit that takes only a few minutes but creates lasting results. Lesson 5. Build a daily English routine that is impossible to skip. Many people believe that successful English learners have extraordinary motivation. They imagine someone waking up every morning excited to study for hours. They picture endless discipline, unlimited energy, and perfect consistency. But the truth is often much simpler. Fluent English speakers are not always more motivated. They are usually more consistent. And consistency comes from habits, not motivation. Motivation is powerful, but it is unreliable. Some days you feel inspired, some days you don't. Some days you are excited to learn. Some days you are tired, stressed, or distracted. If your English progress depends entirely on motivation, your progress will rise and fall like the weather. That is why daily habits matter so much. A habit continues even when motivation disappears. Think about brushing your teeth. You probably don't wake up every morning feeling passionate about brushing your teeth. You simply do it. It has become part of your routine. The most successful language learners treat English in the same way. They remove the need to make a decision every day. Instead of asking, "Should I practice English today?" they automatically follow a routine. This is where many learners make a critical mistake. They create plans that are too ambitious. They promise themselves they will study for 2 hours every day. They buy multiple courses. They create complicated schedules. Then real life happens. Work becomes busy. Family responsibilities increase. Energy levels drop. And eventually, the routine collapses. A better approach is to start smaller than you think necessary. So small that skipping feels ridiculous. Maybe it's 10 minutes of listening. Maybe it's reading one page of an English book. Maybe it's speaking to yourself in English for 5 minutes. The goal is not to impress yourself. The goal is to remain consistent. A small habit repeated every day is far more powerful than a large effort repeated occasionally. Imagine practicing English for just 20 minutes a day. That may not seem like much, but over a year, that becomes more than 120 hours of focused exposure. Most people underestimate what consistency can accomplish over time. Progress in language learning is often invisible at first. Day by day, the improvement seems tiny, but month by month, the difference becomes remarkable. One day you suddenly realize that a video feels easier to understand. A conversation feels smoother. A sentence comes to mind without translation. Those moments are not accidents. They are the result of countless small efforts adding up behind the scenes. So stop searching for the perfect study plan. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Create a routine that fits your real life. Make it simple. Make it sustainable. And most importantly, make it something you can continue even on your busiest days. Because fluency is rarely the result of one extraordinary effort. It is usually the result of ordinary actions repeated for a long time. And there is one final habit that ties everything together. A habit that separates learners who stay stuck for years from those who continue improving for a lifetime. Lesson 6. Become a lifelong learner, not a fluency chaser. Many English learners begin their journey with a single goal. They want to become fluent. It sounds reasonable. After all, fluency is what most people are aiming for. But there is a hidden danger in focusing too much on that goal. The danger is that fluency can feel like a destination, a finish line, a point somewhere in the future where learning finally ends. And because of that mindset, many learners become frustrated. They expect rapid progress. They expect a moment when everything suddenly becomes easy. They expect to wake up one day and feel completely fluent. When that day doesn't arrive quickly, they start doubting themselves. They wonder if they are too old. They wonder if they lack talent. They wonder if they are wasting their time. But the most successful language learners see things differently. They do not chase fluency. They chase growth. They understand that learning a language is not a short-term project. It is an ongoing journey. Even native speakers continue learning new words, new expressions, and new ways to communicate throughout their lives. There is no point where learning completely stops. And strangely enough, this realization can be incredibly freeing. When you stop obsessing over fluency, you begin enjoying the process. Instead of asking, "Am I fluent yet?" you start asking, "What did I learn today?" Instead of measuring yourself against native speakers, you compare yourself to who you were last month. Instead of focusing on what you still cannot do, you notice how far you have already come. This shift in perspective changes everything. Learning becomes less stressful. Mistakes become less painful. Progress becomes easier to recognize. And most importantly, your motivation becomes more sustainable. Because now, success is no longer some distant achievement. Success becomes today's effort, today's listening session, today's conversation, today's new phrase, today's small improvement. The truth is that language learning is much like planting a tree. You cannot force it to grow overnight. You cannot pull on the branches to make it taller. You simply provide the right conditions and trust the process. Day after day, week after week, month after month. Growth happens, sometimes slowly, sometimes invisibly. But it happens. The learners who eventually become fluent are rarely the ones who move the fastest. They are the ones who refuse to stop. They continue listening. They continue reading. They continue speaking. They continue learning. Not because they are perfect, not because they never get discouraged, but because they understand that every small step matters. So if your English isn't where you want it to be today, don't be discouraged. Remember what you've learned throughout this story. Live in English instead of only studying it. Listen deeply before worrying about speaking perfectly. Use the vocabulary you already know. Accept mistakes as part of growth. Build simple habits that you can maintain every day. And most importantly, commit yourself to lifelong learning. Because fluency is not built in a week. It is built through thousands of small moments that seem insignificant on their own, but become powerful when combined. Keep showing up. Keep practicing. Keep believing that progress is possible. One day, you'll look back and realize that the English you once struggled with has become a natural part of your life. And that is the reward waiting for those who stay on the journey. And now, before we say goodbye, remember this. You do not need to be perfect to become fluent. You do not need a special talent. You do not need to know every grammar rule or memorize thousands of words. What you need is consistency. A few minutes of listening, a little reading, a little speaking, a little courage to keep going, even when progress feels slow. Day by day, these small habits create extraordinary results. So wherever you are on your English journey today, be proud of yourself for continuing to learn and grow. The fact that you're investing your time in improving your English already puts you on the path toward a brighter future and greater opportunities. If you enjoyed this story and found value in it, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you won't miss future stories designed to help you improve your English while learning powerful life lessons. Thank you for spending these moments with me. Take care of yourself, keep practicing, and remember, every day you use English is another step toward the fluent speaker you're becoming. See you in the next story.